Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and on the news you see dragons are real. Not one dragon, not two. Every type of dragon from fantasy movies suddenly exists in our modern world. Twitter would crash in 5 minutes. TikTok would become dragon videos only. The military would be on maximum alert. And billionaires would immediately try to buy one. But the real question is, would humanity actually survive dragons? The answer completely depends on which dragons we're talking about. Some dragons would become pets, some would become military weapons, and some, humanity would collectively decide need to go extinct immediately.
So today, we're looking at what would actually happen if dragons from famous fantasy movies existed in the 21st century. And honestly, some of these worlds would become complete nightmares. Let's start with the best case scenario. How to train your dragon. These dragons would definitely survive the modern world, because most of them were small enough to coexist with us realistically. A lot of them behave more like dangerous exotic animals than unstoppable monsters. Toothless alone would become the most famous creature on Earth in about 3 days.
People would absolutely tame dragons. No question. Who doesn't want to ride a flying, fire-breathing lizard? Within a few years, dragon ownership would become heavily regulated. There would be dragon licenses, dragon insurance, dragon trainers, Dubai princes with designer dragons. Eventually, governments might have to step in, because the second humans discover dragons are intelligent, conservation laws are happening immediately. Especially for rare species, environmental groups would lose their minds trying to protect them. Save the Night Furies would become a global movement. But there's also another reason these dragons survive. They can bond with humans. That changes everything. Imagine a dragon that acts like a giant cat. Yeah, humanity is keeping those alive. Game of Thrones dragons. Now let's talk about the dragons from Game of Thrones. This is where things get political very fast. These dragons are basically flying weapons. And the problem isn't even the dragons themselves, it's who controls them. In that universe, dragons are loyal to very specific bloodlines. That immediately creates the most dangerous imbalance of power in human history. Imagine if one family on Earth could control creatures capable of destroying small cities. Nobody's accepting that. These dragons are tied to bloodlines. You either have dragon blood or you don't. Meaning a tiny group of people suddenly become superior to the rest of humanity forever. Humans are way too selfish to accept that peacefully. The second government realizes that only certain families can control dragons, those bloodlines become targets not because humanity is rational, because humanity is terrified of losing control. There would be assassination attempts, military operations, global cooperation to eliminate the threat. The dragons probably get wiped out alongside the bloodlines controlling them. Lord of the Rings dragons? No way. Especially something like Smaug. Because Tolkien dragons aren't just dangerous, they are intelligent. And somehow that makes them worse. These dragons are basically greed turned into a living creature. They don't trade, they don't create anything useful. They just hoard gold forever, like scaly crypto billionaires. Dragons taking over entire mountains filled with trillions in gold and resources. There is no scenario where world governments allow a giant fire-breathing capitalist to sit on strategic resources. Reign of Fire. Now for the absolute nightmare scenario. These dragons don't negotiate, don't bond with humans, don't want peace. They see humanity the same way humans see chickens: food. This is the one scenario where humanity would respond with zero hesitation. They are getting exterminated. You would see the fastest military mobilization in human history. Every major country would cooperate. Entire economies would shift toward dragon warfare. Anti-air technology would evolve insanely fast. These dragons would absolutely cause chaos at first. Cities would burn. Millions would die. But we still do have satellites, radar, thermal imaging, drones, missiles. In the long term, humanity wins. Harry Potter dragons. Dragons from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire are interesting. These dragons are dangerous.
but manageable. They're basically magical wildlife. And honestly, they'd probably end up like elephants or rhinos, protected, rare, constantly hunted illegally. There would 100% be dragon black markets, secret underground dragon fights. Governments would probably keep them contained in isolated zones, dragon preserves, massive nature reserves, and tourism would explode. People already risk their lives taking selfies with bears. You think they wouldn't pay to see a real dragon? Come on.
The real threat isn't always the dragons themselves. It's humanity. Some dragons would survive because we love them. Some would die because we fear them. And some would go extinct simply because humans refuse to share power with anything else. Fantasy stories usually ask, what if dragons existed? But the more interesting question is, what kind of humans would we become if they did? If dragons suddenly appeared tomorrow, some would become celebrities, some would become weapons, and some would learn very quickly why humans became the dominant species on Earth. Also, let me know in the comments which dragon universe would actually survive modern humanity, because personally, I think most dragons are getting smoked.